Now it's time for perspective on the programme. We're going to meet a woman today whose works have centred really on feminism, corruption and also the caste movement in India. She's a poet, a fiction writer, a translator and of course also then an activist. Meena Kandasamy, publishing 2 collections of poetry and winning a number of accolades for them as well. And she joins me here on set. Thanks very much for being with us on the programme, first of all. Meena, I know you saw my tweet yesterday. I was trying to sum up who you are and what you're all about. I said feminist for sure, also political activist, perhaps tapping into India's youth, trying to really get them and attract them as well. I mean, did I sum you up correctly, do you think?
I think, yes, I am a very unashamed feminist and I would consider myself a youth as well. Yeah, and of course, a lot of us are angry with the inequality in our society and we're still raging. So, yes, you're right in your description.
How difficult is it to fight inequality, sexism, that kind of thing, particularly in perhaps India, which might be seen as a little bit more of a conservative country than others?
I think in an Indian society, we have 2 different problems. One is, of course, the pain of patriarchy being imposed on us in the name of tradition, culture, language, religion, all of that. But we also are a caste society, which makes it more difficult because all of this oppression is also intermingled with caste oppression. And people don't take it easily because, you know, it's assumed that this is the women's place, this is what women are supposed to do. And if they don't do it, then they are like bad. So I think there's a huge weight of judgment that comes with it. But I also think that it's very important to speak up because it's not only speaking up for yourself, but you're speaking up for a lot of people like you.
And you speak up in lots of different ways, don't you? I mean, I see you've got your latest book there. It's a fictional book, isn't it? But I mean, it's called When I Hit You, or a portrait of a writer as a young wife. I mean, it just describes some quite appalling domestic abuse, doesn't it? And toxic masculinity as well.
Yes, I think it's autofiction, like a lot of French writers. I was stealing from my own life to write about it. But I think it was, for me, when I started as a writer, political writer, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to write about the government and the state and capitalism and big things. And then you think that what happens to the woman, even I was thinking it's something in the domestic sphere, it's always just a family matter. But then it happens to you and it just shatters your world because you realize that this is so fundamental. And that's also why I thought that I have to handle it in literature. We cannot dismiss it as, oh, it's just some women's problem. It's just in the kitchen, you know.
And it's something that you do, though, through writing, as I said, in fiction.
Yes, I thought it has to reach a lot of people. A lot of people have to identify it beyond just one person's story. And therefore, I choose fiction. And I think it speaks to people.
What reaction do you get from men in India?
Well, there was I can give an example of one literary festival where a man asked, do you hate men? Can you say 2 good things about men just to make us feel better?
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise I've had rape threats on Twitter,
Right.
Murder threats, you know, the actual aggressive, toxic masculinity in the face.
Yeah. Did you manage to find 2 things, by the way?
I've been safe.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. Also, as you mentioned before, you're a bit of a critic as well of the caste system in India. That, of course, the system which means, of course, it's very difficult, isn't it, to move between castes in India. I mean, for example, you're expected to marry within your caste. Why are you so critical of that system?
Partly because it renders some people as, non-human in the sense that it really pushes them down the ladder. Not everybody gets equal access to opportunity. People are actually seen as superior and inferior. Like if it was happening on racial terms or nationalistic terms, we would all be on the street, but because it happens in the names of caste and it's preordained because of, karma and other stuff, then we don't understand the same outrage. But there's also a huge amount of violence into it. So as you said about this marriage question, one, it's about the control of women and women's sexuality. So you cannot choose who you want to live with, and this is a fundamental decision in your life. And 2, I also think that caste is regimented because of violence. So there's instances where a girl and a boy marry across caste, and then people are burning entire villages, like to show other young people, like this is what you're supposed to do, this is not what you're supposed to do. And I think that, we have to challenge that. This is our life, and we have to believe in our own self-determination.
A lot of people still do support the caste system, of course. I mean, even Gandhi called the system the genius of the Hindu society. I mean, you're quite critical of Gandhi even for saying that too.
Well, Gandhi and I have had a quarrel for a long time since I ever heard about him. I think one of the things about Gandhi is that, yes, you know, in an international media, he's shown as this great saint, but we have to understand that he was backed by the biggest corporations of that day. Like, we're not going to like somebody who's, backed up by the biggest corporations today, are we? We're going to be very critical of them. But he was backed by India's biggest capitalist, and he was, of course, he therefore had a big interest in supporting the caste system and performing it. So in that sense, he was trying to do everything to say, oh, but if you have to clean the toilets, you should take pride in doing it. But of course, only a certain class of people were made to clean toilets, not everybody. And I think that Gandhi was trying to give casteism a human face, but there's no human face for things like that.
And how else do you get your message across? I mean, one of them is poetry.
One of them is poetry. Possibly the most intimate to me is poetry. But I also think there's nothing like organizing or getting on the streets or taking part in demonstrations. I've also started using a lot of social media for this because, in a sense, you bypass the structures of traditional media.
I was going to say, that's very different, isn't it? I mean, going from writing books and poetry to social media. Was that just something that you really felt you had to get in on early, as it were, particularly with the younger generation, as I say?
One is, as much as we can be critical of Facebook or Twitter, the fact is they have unparalleled reach, because earlier, when I was 17, I was working in a little magazine, and to produce just, a couple of 100 copies, it required so much effort and money. But then you're on Facebook and you can take the story across and, just share the same thing instantly without, a certain censorship. And I think in that sense, even though they're trying to censor all of this, but in that sense, it's liberating.
And just finally, you've been here in Paris, haven't you, signing some of your books, as it were, at Shakespeare and Company here.
Yes, yesterday I did a reading there.
Yeah. Went well?
It went well. It's very humbling, beautiful, charming experience.
Okay, great. Well,
so thank you for having me.
Yeah, very nice to have you on the programme today. That's Meena Kandasamy, publishing many works of books and literature as well in the defence of women. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme today. That was today's Perspective.